Alright everybody, welcome to today's video. I hope you're having a fantastic day out there today. Today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, of course, is the Dodge Viper. Now recently I had the opportunity to drive a Gen 1 Dodge Viper. You saw the video about the ad for my friend's car that they're selling. I was able to drive that car. Now good news, that car did sell, so great for my friend. They were able to sell that Viper. But it leads into today's topic, and driving a Gen 1 Viper is now, after all of these years of being involved in the Viper community and owning a Viper for close to 10 years now, I have finally driven all 5 generations of Dodge Vipers. And what can I say? It's been quite an experience to be able to drive each and every different generation car. They're all very unique and very different, but at the same time they're very familiar because they share a lot of similar characteristics over the generations. Of course, my favorite is going to have to be the Gen 2. I'm sure the newer ones got more refined, got more power, got more drivability into them. The Gen 5s are an amazing machine. And they've got your traction control, your ABS, and they've got 645 horsepower. They've got upgraded leather interiors on the GTS models, the ones that got the optional leather, and the infotainment systems. The Gen 5s are an amazing car, but at the same time, the Gen 2 is probably, for me, the perfect balance between the generations of Viper. So driving the Gen 1 Viper, it was definitely a unique experience, and I absolutely loved it. Having the top off and having the exhaust pipes right there out the side of the door was just really an amazing experience. And it was definitely very different than driving the Gen 2, but at the same time, like I said, it felt very familiar and very similar to driving the newer one. Of course, the suspension designs are very different between the two, and there's definitely more power on the Gen 2. But I definitely learned I have to have an RT10 Roadster in my life at some point. Probably won't be a Gen 1 though. When I get to the point when I'll be buying an RT10, it'll probably be a Gen 2, and then I'll just convert to put side pipes on it, so that way it's like the Gen 1. So the reason why I would rather have a Gen 2 RT10 over a Gen 1 RT10 is several things. One, with the Gen 2, you've got the increased horsepower, and the engine bay, I'm definitely familiar with the layout and the engine and how everything is set up on a Gen 2, and so going to a Gen 1 would definitely be a little bit of a learning curve. Not that's insurmountable, but having a Gen 2 already and being familiar with that platform, getting another Gen 2 for the RT10 would make a lot of sense because it's apples to apples at that point. And of course, the suspension design differences, the upgrades that they did on the Gen 2 over the Gen 1 makes a huge difference. And then, of course, probably the biggest difference, of course, is having outside door handles and roll-up windows. Those are just huge if you want to go and lock the car somewhere if you're taking it out, because you can't do that with the Gen 1. And so that was one of the biggest deciding factors on why, when I get to the point when I'm buying an RT10, that I would go with the Gen 2 over the Gen 1. I also prefer the gauge layout of the Gen 2s over to those of the Gen 1s. The dash is a bit different and the gauge layout is a little different. And then having the airbag steering wheel stuff and AC and all those other things. Granted, you can have AC on some of the Gen 1 cars. And so yeah, for those reasons, definitely a Gen 2 RT10 for me in the future. And then just put side pipes on so you get the side exhaust, because having the exhaust right there is just really, really cool. So going over the different ones that I've driven. So the very first Viper I drove was actually a Gen 3. And it was during the SRT track experience, and it was at Sears Point Raceway in the rain. So my first Viper experience is driving in the rain on a racetrack was definitely an eye-opening experience. Up to that point, I was really used to driving either my Challenger or my SRT4, and so it was definitely a learning curve. But we had a blast doing it. Only got a little loose on the rear end early on in the first lap out, but got everything under control and had a great time doing it. And the Gen 3 and Gen 4 cars, they're pretty similar. The Gen 4 I drove at another SRT track experience a couple of years later up at Thunder Hill. At that point, they weren't allowing us to go on the full road course, but we were able to still drive the SRT10 Gen 4 Vipers, and it was a lot of fun. Very similar between the two, the Gen 3 and the Gen 4. Biggest difference, of course, you got an extra 100 horsepower and so you definitely can feel that difference in the acceleration. But from an interior standpoint, the comfort, the way things are laid out, of course, it's pretty much the same between the two cars. And then the Gen 5, I've spent a little bit of time in those. Did an SRT event down in San Jose where it was like an introduction to the Gen 5 Viper kind of thing, where you got to come out, and we went and drove the Gen 5s on city streets and on the highway. So that was a really cool, like, real world experience. And I love the Gen 5 Viper. The styling, of course, is amazing. It's reminiscent of the early Gen 2 cars, and it just looks incredible. The extra power is nice, of course, going up to the 645 horsepower. All the different amenities and stuff is really nice. The shorter shifter and things like that. The biggest issue for me on the Gen 5, of course, are the blind spots. The C-pillar area is pretty prevalent, the blind spot on those cars, compared to like the Gen 2s. So that's definitely something to be considering. But the comfort and power of those cars is just great. Having the side exit exhaust again is just really amazing. And it really helps bring in the whole experience of driving the car and the feel of it. And so at the end of the day, you really can't go wrong with any generation Dodge Viper. They're all amazing cars. They've of course just gotten more refined and more powerful as time has progressed. The Gen 2, of course, as prevalent by the fact that I've got my 96 here, has been my favorite and will always be my favorite. And it's just a timeless design. I think the Gen 5 look is going to be also a timeless classic. Some of the Gen 4s, like the ACRs, those ones are definitely going to be holding their value and looking really sharp down the road. Some of the other ones, the Roadsters, you definitely, unfortunately, of all the years, if any year is going to be confused as a Corvette, is probably going to be like a Gen 3 Roadster, maybe a Gen 4 Roadster. But they're still amazing cars. They perform really well. They're a lot of fun. Whether or not I'll have a Gen 3 or a Gen 4 Viper in the future, it's hard to say. I'm definitely going to have a Gen 5 launch edition just because it matches so well with my 96, and then a RT10 as well, second gen, that'll convert to having side pipes. Now, what color I'm going to get for a RT10, not sure yet. We're still a ways off for that. I've got a couple other cars to get before I look at buying another Viper. But still, they're all great vehicles. I hope you found this video entertaining. If you have any questions on the differences between the generation Vipers, let me know. Go ahead and put in the comment section down below, because I read all of your comments. I will be doing a video in the coming weeks where I go over the evolution Dodge Viper from 1992 with the Gen 1 all the way up to the final cars of 2017 in the Gen 5 acr-e's. So look forward to that coming out. I'll go over how the car has evolved, differences between the generations, performance changes, design changes, things like that. So that's going to be a great video, going to be full of information. So, and as always, if you want to keep updated with all my future videos, don't forget to smash that subscribe button down below, ring that notification bell as well. And as always, guys, I will see you the next video.